And we are live. What's going on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And since it's Tuesday, it's time for another session of the Men's Circle. We're going to jump straight into it. No, we're not. I'm just playing. We ain't going to jump straight into it. We got to actually talk about something, because something iconic happened this past weekend. And it's just important to get that out there. So, this past weekend, we had the first in-person Men's Circle event, Legacy. It was a conference. It was a one-day conference where we were able to meet as a group of men, get some clarity on legacy, get some tools on how to improve and strengthen our legacy, and really work on learning the tools that it takes to build rapport with other men in order to have vulnerable and deeper conversations. So, that's from my perspective, but my brother Tim down here was actually at that conference. I should say the majority of that conference, because he was being father and growing at the same time. But Tim, if you could come off mute and share a little bit about your experience at that conference, I'd appreciate it, bro.
It was amazing. Just there's being live is one thing, and that's cool and all, but being live and in person, in having that natural dialogue with not just what everybody that's really ever contributed, some people that's never even been on the show, it was insightful, because everybody has great ideas. Everybody does something that you could kind of steal a piece from, and it was so much needed. Like, I felt myself thinking about that day when I've had interactions with my kids ever since. Like, it's resonated, which is resonance was one of our things that we talked about on Sunday. So just trying to getting to the roots of things, why we are the way that we are, and holding ourselves accountable for things that we should, and learn how to forgive for the things that we've done wrong in the past. But I can't wait for the next one. I look forward. I bother you about, like, I asked you on Sunday, hey, we still on for Tuesday, or are we taking a break because we're doing this today? And you're like, nah, we're on Tuesday. So I think this provides a much needed voice to people, to where they don't feel alone, because a lot of people think they're alone, and to see that there's so many people that are like us it's refreshing to know that you're not alone. It's reassuring. And then now you don't have to be alone anymore going forward. So that was my takeaway from it.
Yeah, no, man, I appreciate you showing up, Art. I know you were on a completely different coast than us for this one. But the good news is we will have another one, and we expect there to be many, many more men at that next conference that we host. But yeah, man, I cannot really put into words very well the high that I was on. Don't get me wrong, I was exhausted after Sunday. I mean,
activities. I got to cut you off. The activities. There was one activity where me and Glenn walked around. I won't reveal too much of the secret sauce, but you had questions that you just made a selection, and you got your random questions, and you had to ask them. And I told Glenn off the questions that I asked him, which I won't spoil, I don't know if I would have picked this question if I didn't have to ask it, Glenn. And that's how I started off with asking him the question. Like, hey, I probably wouldn't be asking this question unless this made me. But his response to that and his insight, and it just, you get to go deeper. Like that's I guess, the overall thing I'll say. And I didn't mean to cut you off, but what that conference allowed us to do is take themes and dive into them way deeper than we've been able to do So yeah, the activities, man, the activities alone were money.
Yeah. Well, the food I heard was money. I didn't eat that day, but I heard the food was on point.
Some of the best eggs I've ever had. Uh, the pineapple orange juice medley I had. I woke up this morning wanting that, and I ain't got that in the house.
And I ain't got it. I wanted it, but I can't drink pineapple juice. Hey, what's going on, Del Paso? Man, there were so many things in there, and I love that you bring up the activities because I do believe there was a significant amount of thought that I placed into those activities, and I had very specific intentions on those activities for what I wanted them to bring out. It's easy, like, oh man, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's a very general question, and it gives me, as the person answering the question, how much do I want to know about this person, right? How much do I want this person to know about me? But when you're given a blind selection of a question that you're going to receive, and that question is definitely not a question that you would have started with when you're forming a relationship or just kind of like still getting to know somebody. It makes a difference, but there was a lot, and I don't know. I might somewhere down the future host another legacy conference, but we'll see what the next conference will be. It won't be legacy; it'll be something different. Um, but with all that being said, as I said, we were going to jump straight into it. Now we're going to jump straight into it. Tonight's conversation is going to be about reliability. Um, as always with my topics, I like to start off with what the topic means to you. Art, you were in first. What does the topic of reliability mean to you? And for those in the chat live, type in what reliability means to you. What does the topic of reliability mean to you?
Oh my man, reliability. That's a pretty big word there because reliability at the end of the day is someone you can depend on in a sense where you're doing it out of love, you're doing it out of heart to where they're not going to come back at you and say, "Oh well, since I helped you, you owe me now." You know what I mean? It's that when you're in a dire situation, mentally, physically, emotionally, whatever it is, that you have that one person you can go to and that person's gonna come through. You know what I mean? No questions asked, and no judgments, no nothing. The integrity of that person, at the end of the day, that's what their character is, and that's what you're gonna rely on.
I love it. And I love, we're going to come back to that word integrity because I love that word integrity when it comes to reliability. Tim, what does the topic mean to you?
It's funny because it's changed over the years. What it means now, because I've kind of reverse engineered this. So, in short, I don't know if there's a bigger honor you could have as a man than somebody thinking that you're reliable. I don't know if there's a bigger honor you could have. And the reason why I've landed on this is I've thought about who do I consider reliable. And those people that I consider reliable, they're A plus people. Integrity, discipline, honor, respect. They're high standard, high value individuals. So when someone sees me in that light, I see it as an honor now. Back in the day, I used to see it as an inconvenience. I used to see it as, oh, I'm reliable, so you're using me. But what I've done with other things and other tools that I've cultivated over years is the people who had that access to me for me to become reliable to them in the first place are worthy people. So when those people think that I'm reliable, it's probably one of the most touching things somebody could say to me personally is, man, I know I could count on you. Because that's what they're saying is when you're reliable is I know I could count on you. That's huge. So to me, it's probably one of the biggest honors anybody could describe me as.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was thinking about kind of how I show up in the world as just Billy the person, right?
You talked about that in
And
the conference, the intention, how you show up.
mhm, and not just, and it's not just how you show up. It's the trust that instills. Because when I think about reliability, I can't think about reliability and not think about trust, because it's been a difficult journey for me at times to be able to rely on other people, because people can let you down. People, like you say often, Tim, sometimes you're putting unrealistic expectations on unreliable people, right? And so they let you down, and that causes your faith and your trust in others to kind of falter a little bit. But when I think about reliability, and especially this particular topic, I immediately go to me. And it reminds me of, that saying, a man's word is worth its weight in gold, right? When I say I'm going to do something, it is of the utmost importance that I do it, because every time I say I'm going to do something and I don't do it, I am tarnishing that characteristic, and that's why I said art integrity, the integrity of my reliability. And that's the last thing you want people to have in question about you as a person, especially as a man. Like, yeah, he's just talking shit. He's not really going to do what he said he's going to do. He's not really going to show up. Oh, yeah, man, I got your back. If you ever need anything, how many times have we heard that? If you ever need anything, call me. And then you call, and it's like, oh, well,
Do
right
do
now.
do. We're sorry.
Go straight to voicemail. Just voicemail. Like, damn, I mean, you told me to call when I have something or I need something. I'm calling because I need something. And I actually experienced some of this when I was dealing with the conference. Like the night before the conference, I had a very, very long day on Saturday before the Sunday conference. And one of the brothers who came to the conference had texted me and was like, hey, do you need anything for the conference, or is there anything that you need or that I need to bring to the conference? And I didn't see the text because I went to bed early, even though I had a long day. I went to bed so early. I didn't see the text till like 2:30 in the morning. And it was like, okay, I'm not going to respond to you at 2:30 in the morning and tell you if I need something. So I made the decision not to respond to him in that. But there was genuinely nothing that I needed for the conference. I had set the conference up almost like a one-man band, to where I could play the drums, I could play the guitar, the keyboard, and sing the song and play the harmonica every once in a while if I need to, and bang the cymbal with my feet. Like whatever it took, I could do that, because that's how I set it up. And I set it up that way because in my mind, the men that were attending that conference were relying on me to have that conference move in a certain way. And so for me, this topic really embodies one of my key principles of manhood, is that a man should be reliable. And it starts with us being reliable, and I'm going to add the word accountable, to ourselves. It's hard to get to a space of reliability for other men or other people in your life if you can't stand on your own too, in the aspect of keeping your word to yourself. Hey man, I'm gonna go. I know, Tim, you did a fast a while back, and you're like, I'm gonna go a couple of days on this fast. And right. And that's like, okay, are you going to keep your word to yourself that this is what you're going to do? Now, obviously, if there's like a medical condition that spikes because of this, then obviously abandon the mission. Makes sense. But if it's not, and it's just like, man, I'm really hungry and those Oreos look good, how reliable are you going to be to yourself? Right. And I feel like oftentimes many of us as men, not when it comes to Oreos, but when it comes to maybe women, or it comes to spending, or it comes to ego, we're not as reliable as we could be in those spaces. Um, Art, I have a question for you that I want to ask. So when, oh, sorry, did you just come off so you can answer the question?
Yeah, I was going to answer. I'm Sagittarius.
Uh, Larry, and I'm a Cancer. A Cancer, and my name's Larry. Uh, when you are looking at other people, one, what is the measure that you use to kind of quantify what their reliability is? And then I guess before that, what is it that you use to really measure a person's reliability, like that you can, I think you had said you can count on them. What is it that you use? What's the stick you use to measure your ability to count on other people?
You know what? Honestly, like I've worked so many, a little bit of a background of mine of working in law enforcement, now military. I kind of, in a sense, just kind of throw myself at their mercy in a sense. Like, hey, what's up, man? My name's Art. Hey, Billy, nice to meet you. Hey, how's it going? Eventually, build up a little bit of a foundation of who you are, and in the sense that that's first 30 seconds of how you present yourself. You know what I mean? Um, but at the end of the day, it's just kind of, in a sense, giving you that small little task and building up task by task until that big important one, where it's like 8 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and you get that phone call like, "Hey man, I just bought a grill, but I don't have a truck. Can you help me transport my grill?" You know what I mean? And it's like, hell yeah, let's do it. You know what I mean? It's like, because at the same time, I need to prove that I'm gonna be a person of integrity, a person of reliability. It's just, to me, it's kind of hard to where I'm just building up those little stones of reliability until you yourself knock it over. You know what I mean?
Mm. I like that start small part. That's why you've seen key takeaway pop up on the screen, because that portion of where sometimes our reliability, I'm going to say our ability to trust others gets severely diminished because we trust the wrong people. And it's not even that we trust the wrong people that's the problem. You're going to trust some people in life that are just the wrong people. That's going to happen. The problem is we trust the wrong people with too much too fast.
Yes,
And
that's true.
that's what turns around and bites us. So I love that it's, I'm going to give you a little bit and see how you handle a little bit. It's almost like an exercise I did with my son a long time ago when he was not performing well in school. And my son's extremely bright, but if you've ever played a sport, you realize there's a difference between natural talent and practiced talent, right? You might be naturally a gifted athlete and beat the hell out of people for the first 4 years. But that kid who sucks, who's practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing, will overcome you. And so with my son, super bright child, but you're not doing the work. You're not doing your homework. You're not doing your assignments. And yeah, you can probably just take the test and pass the test because you have a good common sense engine. But at some point, that test is going to be too hard for you to just naturally pass. And so we're at the gym and we're bench pressing. And I'm, just put a 45 on each plate. Bench press, bench press, bench press. Okay. And then I get up and I'm like, all right, it's your turn. Oh, wait, let me fix the weight for you. And instead of taking the 45-pound plates off, I put a 45-pound plate and a 25-pound plate on both sides. And said, all right, go. And he's looking at me like, the hell you think we're about to do here? And so, of course, I'm going to spot him and protect him as his father. But I'm like, all right, let's get this off. I'll help you lift it off, and then you get it. And so he lifts it off, and I'm like right under it as it goes down, and he can't push it up. I'm like, come on, man, you got this. You got this. Just get one. Just get one. Knowing if I was under that, I'd be like, 1.5, I'm done. Like, get this off me. I'm not trying to be the Hulk out here. And so I re-rack the weights, and I start talking to him about, like, this is kind of how life is. Like, when you're naturally gifted, or like I'm a naturally trusting person. Not that I naturally trust others, but people naturally trust me. And so because of who I am, people throw a lot my way. Sometimes they overshare because they feel comfortable in that. And fortunately, I'm a person who's worth that trust and can handle that responsibility. But when we are interacting with somebody who we're just naturally oversharers, and we're sharing these responsibilities, and it's like, yeah, my PIN number to my ATM card is this, my code to my house is this, and this is how you turn off the alarm, and the passcode that they call is this. And then they rob you, and they're like, well, you gave us the code, so we didn't send the police. It's like, yeah, you unfortunately didn't take any measure of the reliability of the person and the newness of that person to your life. They haven't even, in many cases, they haven't even shown up yet in your life in a substantial way where it's been one of those when I needed you the most moments. You know what I mean? Tim, what's your thoughts on that? How do you measure reliability, and what's your stick?
This is something I'm really working on because kind of trying to get out of that. It's funny because you got to try to practice what you preach sometimes, right? Like we don't want to suffer in silence and all this stuff. But losing the stigma of relying on somebody costs you your independence or whatever it is that you're, because sometimes when you need somebody to come through to you for you, it makes you feel a certain type of way that you had to reach out in the first place. So getting over that stigma has been big in my life. But it's funny, it's like there is benchmarks when I think about it. It's, do you come through in celebratory fashion? Like, are you involved? Are you able to, can I count on you when things are good? If things are good and I can count on you, then it's about what's the engagement? Do I always got to reach out to you, or are we reaching out back and forth? Is that engagement consistent? And then it's, what are you doing with information that I'm giving you? If I say something to you that I say to you, and I hear that from somebody outside circling back to me, then I don't know how reliable I can be to you, because what's being between me and you is now, I might as well have posted that shit on Facebook. But little things like that is little gauges that you use, and then you kind of pay attention to the person, how they live their life. Some people, I don't want them to come through for me because they can't even come through for them. And it's like, how do you run your life? Like, are you stable in things that you're doing? Are you because you could get advice, especially with men. You could look, does your spouse respect you? Does she talk to you any kind of way? uh does your family look to you like you're the rock? Because that's who I want to be able to rely on, is somebody, because I view myself like that. I don't want to rely on somebody that's not of that ilk. I'd rather just figure it out on my own. So paying attention to a lot of those little things like that, like how do others perceive you, not just me. So those are some of the things that tools that I use. And when you say something, do you do it? Or is it you say something that sounded real good, but now all of a sudden, nah, not happening. Like I wonder how many people you talked to about the conference that didn't come through, that were saying they wanted to go, they wanted to be a part of it, but they couldn't for reasons that, yeah, they were in town. They don't have the other coast excuse that Art has. It's just messing with you, Art. But how many people were in town, couldn't make it happen? You get what I mean? So I pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's those people who are always saying what they would do, what they would have done, what they could have done, what they should have done, but never have done anything. Those are the people that I don't rely on, and I don't expect reliability out of them. I had a really challenging experience where a woman said that she had my baby, and it turned out she didn't have my baby. But even in that, it was a conversation that I had to have with myself about my measure of reliability as a father, right? Because it's easy to be a father when you have a child in wedlock, or you have a child with the person you're with, or even if you're single and you have a child with somebody you didn't anticipate to have a child with. That's really easy to, like, step up, to me at least, step up and be a father. Hey, kids sometimes come around. That's what happens sometimes when you're doing adult things, right? But it's a completely different situation when you're in a relationship with someone and the person pregnant is not the person you're in the relationship with. Now you're going to get a test on, is fatherhood really as important as you say that it is to you? are you really a reliable father now, regardless of the circumstances? Or were you just saying that because times were easy, right? It's like, oh yeah, I made $1 million last year. Well, they were giving away $1 million last year, so it was easy to make $1 million. This year, you got to actually work to get it. Are you still gonna make $1 million this year? And so, for me, when I'm like measuring reliability, it's not just with what I see others, how I see others keep and not keep their word with themselves. It's when times are difficult, when things are hard, when it's time to hold each other accountable, whether it's you holding yourself accountable or you holding one of your peers accountable. Um, when it's time to hold somebody accountable, how do you show up then? How reliable are you then? Because the reality is reliability actually covers that accountability scope for us as men. If we're not reliable men, there's no way I could say, hey Tim, man, that decision you made last week, or the way I heard you talking to my godson, it might be counterproductive. I don't have that conversation with you because I'm not a reliable man. But when I'm reliable and I say, hey, look, we have a brotherhood, I'm my brother's keeper. I'm gonna make sure that I'm supporting him in the things that he's doing great, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm helping him to become aware of the things that I think he might be a little off on. Then you have those much more difficult conversations. So reliability is super ingrained into almost every aspect, for me at least, every aspect of manhood. Because if you're unreliable, what you say you stand for is just what you say. You could really stand for anything when it comes time for the action. You stand for anything. It's like a person who barks and says how they'll, oh man, you come over here, I'm gonna knock you out. I'm the guy who's going to say, hey, please stay over there and don't come over here because I will protect myself, right? I'm not going to tell you I'm going to come over there and knock you. I don't need to do all that. But if you come over here, there is no, I'm going to take 5 steps back and 10 steps back and 20 steps back to the freaking nearest ocean before I actually do something. You come over here, you're getting dropped immediately. So I'm going to ask you very nicely, please stay over there because I'm reliable about protecting myself. I'm reliable about protecting my loved ones. And part of protecting my loved ones is protecting one of the providers who provides for them in their life. So I just thought it was interesting on your guys' responses. But I would like to know this because even how reliable I am today, I haven't always been that way. I've missed the mark a lot of times, especially when I was younger, but even throughout my 20s and into my 30s, I was still sometimes missing the mark on reliability. Um, have either of you experienced where you've unintentionally tarnished your reputation when it comes to being reliable?
Many times. I can honestly say many times, and unfortunately, it goes back to that, to where to your beliefs, to your thought process, to your way of being. You know what I mean? Because um, it's just at the end of the day, I believe I tend to find joy, find a goodness in helping people, and taking time to understand why some people are like in need or in jeopardy, right? Um, and at times people are like, hey, that person's pretty shady. I wouldn't associate with that person. But then they're in need, so I'm gonna help out. And right off the bat, oh, ooh, now you're friends with this person, and we don't want to talk to you anymore. You know what I mean? And it's like, why? That person was in need. I just helped out and moved on. It's not like I'm inviting that person over for tea and crumpets. You know what I mean? But yeah, many times I've been put in situations where it's even questioned my other half. You know what I mean? Of like, why are you so into helping this person move? Do you have something going on? No, but you're more than welcome to come to help us. We can use the extra pair of hands. No, no, I'm not for that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, Tim, you're off mute. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. You said something earlier. A man's word should be as worth its weight in gold. I struggled with that for a long time, where I'd say I do something, but I didn't come through. And a lot of that was me overcommitting and placating to the people, because I'd only do that to the people that were closest to me, which makes it even worse that I would tarnish. Because it's funny, because when you said that, I thought about when you don't come through, your word isn't the same weight as in gold, because when you don't do what you say you're going to do, you're putting taxation on the value of your word. And now there's hidden surcharges. Well, he said that, but we'll see if he comes through this time. And there's been times where I told somebody I'd come through for him, and it's not that I blew him off because I wanted to blow him off, but you got to take work, you got to take care of what's taking care of the family. And when what would have been better would have been, hey, I want to come, but I got this going on. If that's not intruding in this, then I'll be there. And then setting that correct expectation. When I went back and I looked on that, a lot of it was that. A lot of it was wishful thinking, but wrong, or not really prioritizing correctly, where you are double booking your time or saying yes to everybody, and then you just can't come through. And it's funny because you lose sight of all the people you do come through for, because as men, we're conditioned to remember when we fail more than when we succeed.
Right.
So you remember when you let people down and the look on their face, as opposed to the people like, man, you really helped out. You really came through for me. You remember those negative times. So yeah, the value of my word has come with surcharges at times and taxation, to where it was supposed to be worth $1 million, but after taxes, it was like 550,000, 50-50,
Right.
And I've made it a point to be better at that over the years. Like now, even with my kids, like I go to all their games, I go to all their practices as much as I can. But like just recently, my girls asked me, they're like, hey, you going to come to our game on Thursday? I'm like, I don't know. I got to check my schedule, because what puts food on the table has to take priority. Or, hey, I could show you all the support from the alley, from our tent together. You know what I mean? So it's not that that's more important. It's just, well, I guess it kind of is more important if I can't wiggle around it,
Yeah.
So being able, and then explaining to them why. Like, to me, for the longest time, I struggled with that, not telling them why. Just, well, I didn't show up because I had this to do. And not explaining it like an excuse, but explaining it ahead of time why it's important. Setting those clear expectations. That's something I've really worked on over these last few years.
Yeah. No.
Sorry to interrupt there. But I kind of like what you just said right now, is explaining, like setting up the expectations, like setting yourself up to, like, hey, there's a possibility I can help. I just have to double check. I kind of like that. That's always been the problem I've had, where I don't double check. I don't got nothing. All right, let's do it. But forgot that I just made plans. You know what I mean?
Right, and not to come off wishy-washy with it either, but like you tell them, like, hey, and there's been times where you're like, yeah, I'm in, I could do it, and that's why I love the wife that I have, because she's like-minded like me. Like, like today, I said, Noah asked me if he could skip soccer practice today, and I was like, you know what? Selfishly, I got a lot of stuff going on. Yeah, just don't make it a habit. I'll let you have a little bit of a decompress today and go hang out with your friend, because he has another practice coming up on Thursday. So I text the coach and the family chain that Noah wasn't going to be at practice today. I didn't talk to my wife about that first. And she's like, hey, is everything okay? She called me. Why isn't he going to practice? And I said, well, truthfully, he wanted to hang out with his friends, and I didn't really see he goes to every practice. It's okay for him to be a kid every now and again, and it wouldn't hurt that I don't have to go to that practice today, if I'm being real. And she goes, I don't know if I would have said that. I would have held him to that. And I was like, but I already told him that I already gave my word that he could do it. She said, okay, well, next time, if let me know ahead of time, because when I seen that, I thought something happened to our son, and you just didn't tell me yet. And I didn't think about it like that. I was like, you know what? You're right. I'll do that next time. But she understood, once I gave my word that he could do it, she wasn't going to come in and override it. And she's done that to me before. With, like, I'm like, yeah, I don't really know if I would have went that way. She's like, well, I already told her, I already gave her my word. I'm like, oh, well, okay. You gave the word, so we got to honor it. So
Right.
having that heightened sense on being cautious with who you give your word to because you know what it means when you do. That's
Right.
been big.
That is big, especially, you know, when you're married. I like the fact you bring the marriage aspect into it, because this is something that with my wife and I've struggled with, because I'm used to just making decisions and living life with the decisions that I've made. That's what I'm used to. But I would always have this bump back from her on, like, you didn't even ask my input. You didn't even ask if that was okay, or this or that or this. And at first I was receiving that as like, why are you nagging me about making a decision for me? Right. But really, the healthier approach, I would say, would be understanding that I know I'm a man of my word. So when I'm saying that I'm going to do something and I'm going to do it, I need to make sure that I'm checking in with my wife to make sure that that further solidifies that I can keep my word. Because if it did come down to like, oh well, my wife and my marriage or keeping my word, I'm gonna have to cancel on whatever my word was. I'm gonna communicate it. I'm not just gonna not show up. But yeah, I'm about to lose my marriage over like, oh well, you told me you'd be at my soccer game. Yeah, no, not this game. Sorry. What were
See,
you gonna say, Tim?
that's the cool part though. Like I've really worked over the years on conditioning hearing the message behind what's being said. Like the way I used to have we used to have some things like that came up, but the way I hear it now, like that example I gave you for today, I don't hear it as like, oh, she's challenging me, because as men we take umbrage with you challenging my decision making because hey, you think I'm intelligent, right? You know, my decision making has been pretty good, right? So why are you having a hard time with what decisions that I'm making? That's not what they mean by that. What they just want to be a part of it, and they want to see that their opinion is valuable too. And there's been many a time where she's altered my decision based on the input that she's given that I didn't even see coming. And there's been plenty of times where my decision stood. And that goes both ways. But what I hear that as is I hear that as a wife wanting to be involved with her husband. That's all. And that's cool. It's it's way better than the alternative of, yeah, just solve all our problems for us, babe. And then you get to a point where you're like, hey, what do you want to eat tonight? Whatever you want, babe. What color are we gonna paint the living room? Whatever you say, babe. And then you have like a yes woman
Right.
as opposed
Be
as
like,
a
never mind.
person. Right. And then you're like,
Then you
God damn,
painted neon
I gotta
green
dress
just
you
to mess
too.
with the house.
Right. Right. So that's what I would challenge you, um, is when you have those situations, try to see what the root behind it is. It's maybe she's not doing the best job of showing you that she gives a shit and that she cares. And it's really rooted in love and wanting to be more involved. Because when you love somebody, you want to be more involved in what they do. You know, my wife
Yeah.
has a love for certain things. Like I'll make it a point to ask my wife, what you reading about? Tell me about what's going on, because I care about what her interests are. Um, and that's just her version of doing that. And, you know, so that's what I would say. Like with that, I think that's pretty cool that you're seeing it that way now.
Yeah. It's a challenge still for me though, because I mean, 40 plus years of making your own decisions and rocking with the decision that you made. um, it's hard to bring somebody else into that. And then sometimes it's even frustrating when you bring somebody else into that, because it's like, I'm already done. I'm like on step 6 and I'm now having to explain step 2 to you. So I can't move to step 6 because I'm explaining step 2 to you. And I get it. You're not in my brain. So you don't move at the speed of electricity that my brain does. But yeah, I'm kind of over talking about step 2 and want to move to step 6. Um, it's also though, when I think about for myself personally, the unintentional tarnishing of your reliability, it can happen, especially in a relationship, with simple things. Like my wife will ask me to do something, and it just, you're dealing with so much in a day, you forget. And so when you talk about Tim being reliable, but who are you being reliable to? Like, how are you prioritizing that reliability? It is important when you're in a relationship to shift that reliability to the relationship. And there's been times where my wife has told me, well, I feel like this person comes before our relationship, or this situation comes before our relationship. And I'm like, in my mind, there is nothing that comes before our relationship. Like nothing and no one come before our relationship. But then you start getting into how your thoughts of reliability and coming through in as many situations as you possibly can impact the feelings of the person that you're with and make them feel like, hey, they're not really a reliable person. They're not really a safe haven to build this foundation for the relationship on. Have you guys ever experienced anything like that? Art, I'm assuming you did because you shook your head like 75 times.
Yeah, that like I said, that's always been my problem. Uh, it just like I'll involve friends or whatnot, and unfortunately, my other half doesn't understand. I believe that I prioritize them, and it's to me, it's like, no, one, I haven't talked to this friend in a few weeks, months, whatever reason, and I'm gonna use that as an excuse to, in a sense, hang out, get caught up with our friendship, do whatever, help out whatever needs he needs, and then call it a day and come back home, and it's like, to me, it's not. I'm not prioritizing them over my relationship, but it's like, if we're just gonna sit at home to hang out and watch TV, then I would kind of, in a sense, rather go and help my buddy change the alternator in his car, because that's, to me, that's important. That's what gets him to A and B, to and from home and work, and support the family, But I don't understand how important it is to the wife to sit down on the sofa and watch TV like a couple. You know what I mean? That's why those are the problems I get.
Yeah, I seen a comedian one time, his name Patrice O'Neill. He said it about men, but it's about women too. He said men want to be left, they want to be not bothered, but they don't want to be alone. Like they want you in the vicinity, but they don't want you to bothering them. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes women are like that too. They just want to have you around. They want to know that you, like my wife said that to me. She's like, I just want to have your presence around me. So again, I try to condition myself to hear that for what the message is. Like, hearing the like, hey, that's love. It could be, it could be worse. She could be like, hey, so you gonna make a weekend out of this? Like, be gone. Like it could be definitely worse. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's kind of cool that she sees that she wants that out of you. And they just don't have access. Like, it's funny because I've been thinking about something that one of our old math teachers said. I don't know if you had Mr. Hagyard at King, Billy, in math. You might have been too good in the math to get him, but I remember one time he told me, he said, hey, because he gave me a math assignment and I had that shit done quick and I did it all in my head, right? And he goes, hey, listen, man. And he looked around so he knew he could cuss, and he goes, man, I don't give a shit how much you know, Tim. He's like, I need you to show your work. And I realize now that's pretty much the playbook to relationships with people. So when I think about all these plans, like you said, Billy, I'm like that too, where I'm like, all right, I'm in step 7. You're bringing me back to step 2. What I look at that is okay, now I got to show my work before I turn in my assignment. And that's really kind of shaped a lot of things. And it's not even just like decision making. It's even like when I compliment my wife and I tell her things like, you're intelligent. I don't just tell her that she's intelligent. I tell her why I feel she's intelligent. I usually give her an example of what she impressed me with her brain. Like, I can believe you figured that out. And that's specificity. I don't know if I'm getting that word right. Specificity. I feel like Dory from Nemo. That being specific, I'll leave it at that. That hits different, man. It hits different. So it helps you with kind of playing into this topic, maintaining your reliability, like that shows that I could count on that person to put thought into something too. So there's a lot that where these things kind of circle around each other.
Yeah, you know, one of the things, and I again, I just because I know this doesn't mean I don't struggle with it. One of the things that I continue to try to learn and struggle with is what Tim says, as far as I'm okay with my wife being in the house. As long as I know she's in the house, in my mind, she's safe and in a space that I can rapidly reach to protect her. I don't need you in the basement with me. I don't need you to sit with me and watch me play video games. I don't need you to sit on my lap by me. Just need to know you're in the house and safe. But I am finding with my wife, for her, where I don't really have a desire to sit and watch her shows, right? And for her, it's like, well, you're not interested in what I'm interested in. No, I'm not interested in this type of programming. So I don't want to watch it. But what I've done in that regard to showing the work is there'll be times where I'll just sit up there, and even if I'm not watching the show, I'm on my phone or something, just in that vicinity, which for her is much closer. For me, she could be on the top floor and I could be in the basement, and there could be a whole floor in between us, and I'm okay. For her, it's like I need to be on the same floor as her, on the same couch as her, with her feet apparently across my legs. Like, that's when it counts. And when it's not that, it doesn't count at all.
Hey Billy, I got a secret for you, bro. I'm gonna lay this information on down for all of you guys. If you guys already know this, great. If not, here's some wisdom. But whenever they want you to watch a TV show that you're not interested, start asking questions. Who's that girl? Why is she wearing a blue top? Why did he kiss her? And then, like 5 to 10 minutes into it, they look at you, and that's a sign you're free to go.
That doesn't work with mine because she will pause the show to answer said question, which makes the show
Oh
longer.
no!
I was gonna
You're
say
like,
that could
pause.
go one or two ways.
Yeah, she will pause and say, "So this is this person, and she did this, and he did that, and I'm just like, oh man,
Never asked.
oh,
I thought she never asked. And then you get the other side of that coin where how Billy said, "Hey, I'm already at step 7. You're asking me about step 2." They'll think like that about that situation. Like, hey, this you're asking about something 2 seasons ago. I'm at season 7. Like, just follow along or whatever. They used to date,
right.
and then you're like, okay. So then you get that's kind of like your indicator of, do they just want me around, or do they need my input for their like? Do they need that level of connectivity, or do they just need me to be around them? You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
So
my wife definitely wants me around.
yeah, my wife is more like what Art said. Like, she'll say they dated before. Like, she'll give me like the brief cliff notes, and then she's like, in her mind, she's like, I'm way past that. Like she was watching The Witcher, and in order to understand what was going on in that show, I had to talk to Sean, one of our good friends, because he watches that show, and he told me, "Oh, this is what's going on." And then I was able to relate to her because she was like, "I'm in season 3, dude. I don't know what to tell you." Uh, so, so yeah, it could go either way, Art. That's a gamble.
Yeah, it. Yeah, but for me, it's not a gamble. It's a pause, and then I turn a 30-minute show into a 45-minute show, and every question is about another 5 minutes after that. So I'm just like, hey, if I don't have a significant question that's going to make a big difference in this plot for me, because I'm not going to see the season finale, and I'm probably not going to go back and watch any of the previous seasons, I just let it roll. Just let it roll. I do have another question for you guys though, because so there's one thing to like unintentionally like tarnish your reliability, right? But I think there's another aspect where it's like sometimes as men we can find ourselves in seasons of being unreliable. Like we just can't seem to get our feet underneath us to keep our commitments. Whether like when I was younger, it was showing up to work on time. Apparently, extremely difficult for a time for me, and now it's just like, yeah, I work, I get there, I get the job done, move on to the next, right? But for you guys, have you ever had seasons of unreliability in your life where maybe things were not as stable as they needed to be for you to be reliable? And if so, how did you pull out of that season and get back to a standard of reliability? Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, y'all just don't have.
I could go.
I think this is
I'll let
Tim's
you go.
turn right here.
So I'm be real with you, man. There's been times where I've been out of season with this out of like defiance, where it's like I'm being spread so thin, but who's worried about me? You know what I mean? I'm caring about all these other things, but who's checking in on old Tim? And then it's almost like a rubber band effect. Like you pull the rubber band, and then when you let it go, it contracts way back to the beginning, and there's no gradually coming to like, okay, let me start rationing out my availability, because that's what reliability is are you available when I need you? And there's no rationing out of that availability. You start doing like, you know what, I'm going ghost. I'm just going to worry and focus on the stuff that revolves around me, because I invested a lot in other people and I ain't getting that same thing, and there's been times where I had that. What's gotten me out of that, and where I wouldn't say I'm completely out of it, the plane's off the runway, but I don't know if the wheels are tucked, if you know what I mean. Like I'm on my way. But what's gotten me out of that is just acknowledging the toxicity of it, of where you're holding others accountable for the actions of somebody else completely. And being able to come to terms with that, like the same thing, like not taking things out on the wrong person, and trying to limit those exposures, and then being more selective of who you invest that time in. Kind of going back to our previous question, being more selective into who you don't just invest to anybody. You wouldn't do that with the stock market. You don't do that with people. So you got to be selective. Who looks to be a reliable source? And the truth is, you don't know any of those things to be guaranteed. You just use those little elements to help you make the most educated of a guess that you possibly can. But the struggle with that is when you don't see that coming to you, where you're like, man, this person knows I'm going through this, but they don't give a shit. They're off living their life. And it's like, maybe I need to live my life too. And then you come across certain individuals that they pay close attention to your life more than you even realize. Like, to give you kind of like a shout out, like I've used this example on the men's circle a lot of times. There's been times where you've noticed how I've been running, like, man, you've been working a lot. I know there's stresses going on with other things, like you got a lot going on. When have you done something fun for yourself? I'm gonna make it happen. Let's get you out here to Utah. Let's have a fun weekend. You've done that for me. You know what I mean? Unprompted, just off of observations that both you and my wife had, and that conversation that you had amongst each other. I got brothers that don't do that. One of them's passed, but he used to. But I got siblings that don't do that. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, and it's that intentionality behind it is key. So if you ask about when did I find myself in a season of being unreliable, it's purposeful. It's usually with intent. It's usually kind of out of being scorned, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? It's like defiant, like, oh, F it all.
Right. I think that's an interesting entry point into becoming unreliable. And it's like, if you were to sit back and ask yourself, is because this person is unreliable, should I adopt that characteristic? The answer is like, no. Like, the hell, I don't.
Exactly.
Right? I don't like how they are as a person, as an unreliable person. Why would I then adopt that and become what they are? But that that going back to the emotional intelligence of it, that hurt or disappointment that we feel for the person not being reliable says, well, I'm going to be unreliable too. You're unreliable to me. Now wait until you need something. See if I'm there, right? And it doesn't have to be like wait until you need something, see if I'm there. If you find that you're in a relationship with somebody that's unreliable and you need to cut that relationship off, cut that relationship off. Every year, every single year, I go through Facebook and I say, yeah, this is not a relationship I need to have anymore. This is not a relationship I need to have anymore. And I cut probably about 20 to 100 people off of my Facebook friends list. And it's because I'm looking at what they're doing with their life as far as what they're marketing that they're doing with their life, right? Because who
Right.
knows what they're doing for real, for real. But what they're marketing that they're doing with their lives, and if that's completely out of alignment with me, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need that I don't need that coming up on my timeline. If I'm ever on social media, I don't want to see that. So maybe if life changes for you, great. And sometimes they notice that they were cut, other times they don't. And either way, I'm okay. But it's not out of a place of spite, because I have been that unreliable person where it's like, man, don't nobody care what Ro has going on. So why should Ro care about anybody else? And then the people who you should be there for, who actually need you in that moment, you're not there for them. It's almost like the parent where that passes down the trauma that they had. Well, my parents didn't give
Right.
me nothing, so I ain't about to give you nothing. What are we talking about? Like, what do you mean? Because your parents didn't provide you with like basic necessities, now I gotta fend for myself. Does that doesn't make sense? And in often
Right.
times when we're in these seasons of unreliability, we probably as men get there because our pride, ego, or we've been disappointed. All those things have been damaged, and so now it's like, well, I'm just gonna step back from being the man that I want to be and become the man that apparently everybody else is. Mm-mm. And the reality,
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no problem. One more thing. The reality is that most of the times, not all the times, but most of the time, when somebody lets you down from a reliability standpoint, it's not personal. They don't know how to be reliable and accountable to themselves. So I don't know why you would think you'd be so special for them to figure that out with you. But
Right.
the reality is, it's not even a personal thing. It's not a personal fact. They didn't wake up and say, I'm going to make them count on me and then watch this. As soon as they need me most, I'm going to ghost them. That's not how the men that I've interacted with in my life think. It's not how the people that I interact with in my life think. So I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
I was gonna say, but that's like to bring it full circle because you asked what reliability means to you, and I said I've changed over the years. I was in that season of uh, defiance, bitterness, whatever the reasons for were. I was intentionally unreliable. To now, I see it for what it is, which is probably the like I mentioned, the biggest honor that someone could have is um, that. Like I love when my wife tells me that she loves me, but when she tells me I can count on you, I trust you, you got this because I know you're gonna get it done. That hits a little different. You know what I mean? Or you always come through for me, or you know you always do what's best for the family. Those things are the things that hit a little bit harder than I love hearing that I love you. Don't get me wrong, but those things are the things that are like, damn, that's what gets me because as a man we live our life to be that. So when that gets said to us, it's like, oh, you see me now, and it's a little bit different. So that's where to kind of bring it all in circle. Yeah, that's what played into my answer at the beginning, where I once looked at being reliable one way. Now I look at it differently because of all the things that you mentioned. You're more selective. You see who you're willing to grant your time to, man. Like you say it all the time, like you only got a certain amount of pumps in this thing and you use it as the currency that it is. And if you're getting some of these pumps from me, you know where you stand with me. Um, just taking that up, taking that into account as well. I think I bought you enough time, Art. What you got?
Thanks, man. You're a lifesaver there. No, actually, to me, in regards to seasons, I don't know if I do have them. I'm not a blessing from God or whatever, but at the end of the day, I try not to hold any grudges because it's not worth the time. It's not worth the headache. Um, if you're gonna tell me, hey, you're gonna be here, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that, great. I'll see you there. If you didn't come through, it's cool. Whatever. You have your excuses. You know what I mean? But like the times I've depended on people, yeah, I've been left on the hang. But for some darn reason, some blessings, whatever, however it is you want to interpret it, other people come through that I never expected. You know what I mean? That I never even bothered or felt a realization that we had that kind of a bond. You know what I mean? Or friendship. Perfect example when I moved from one city in Utah to the last city I was in. Um, it was just myself and my family. You know, I hit up quite a few friends to help out in the move, and everyone had their excuses, whatnot. And one of my coworkers' husbands that I've never met that lived down the street, he came up and helped us. And I'm just like, well, that's a cool dude right there. You know what I mean? Like I don't know this guy. This guy, I work with this dude's wife, and I figured the wife would have been up here at least, helping out. Like she knew. She was the one even helping me resource U-Hauls. Um, but her husband came through, and I'm just like, wow. The next day at work, it was kind of awkward because she was trying to justify, like hardcore justify, why she couldn't go and her husband did. And to me, I'm like, you don't need to justify anything. Hey, it's cool. You didn't show up. You didn't show up. Whatever. The job got done. Shit, I appreciate your husband. Like that's amazing. And we became great friends. Um, but it just goes to sometimes the family. When you rely on family, to them they default to where, oh, it's cool. It's just art. We're his brothers. We're his cousins. He'll accept it. He won't trip out. And it's like, well, whether you're family or not, that's you shouldn't default yourself to that type of mentality where it's tolerable to diss or leave someone on the hang. At the end of the day, it's your character, it's your integrity, and it goes back to, I'm not sure who mentioned it, but some people just weren't raised with that. Some people weren't instilled with that kind of character. And reliability to them is just another word. Um, yeah, just like I don't really, I don't know, I don't really see myself as a person that has seasons. I just keep chugging along, and if it happens, great. If not, then I guess our friendship wasn't as important as I thought it was. But someone else will come by.
Right. Hopefully. I like the comment you made. It's just, I feel like that statement, any statement that starts with "it's just," is a direct opponent of reliability. It's a direct opponent of accountability too. But we'll just stay with the reliability tonight. Um, it's just art. It's just Billy. It's just Tim. And I'm sure because I know hundreds of people in the Sacramento area, right? Um, I put up a conference. People see, and it's always fascinating to me the things that people like on social media. It's like I put a picture up of a burger that I ate that was a good burger, and it's like 100,000 likes, and then you put up something that's like growth inspired, and it's like 2 likes. At the end of the day, I'm not putting it up for likes, so I'm okay with that. But that it's just, I'm sure somebody probably could have had the idea that like even with the men's conference, oh, it's just Billy. He's been doing this stuff for a long time. It's just Billy, right? But even people who have rocked with me since the beginning of the first row walked into the room and was like, yo, this is like a top tier conference. This isn't like, oh, I made some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches last night and got the big thing of chips from Costco. So y'all got some chips and I got you some Shasta sodas. Like this was a real conference with real content.
Don't be dissing on the Shasta, homie.
Hey, Shasta soda is not a pricey soda. It's not you can't drink Shasta soda with your pinky out. um, but it's whenever I hear that, it's just, and I try to catch myself because I've been better at catching myself from saying it out loud, but when I think it is where I'm now trying to catch myself. It's just this. It's just that. It's just And I'm like, no, it's not. Even this past weekend, I was able to catch my godson's soccer game, and I don't often get to catch them because I don't live in the state. And so to have the opportunity to catch that game and say like, hey, yeah, it's just a soccer game. I mean, he's not playing in AAU soccer or whatever the league is. It's soccer by any means, but it's not. It's that showing the reliability and not when it's requested. And I think that's what truly empowers our reliability. Going back to what you said, Tim, to be able to see, hey, my brother is struggling right now. He's overworked, overwhelmed, and he needs a pause and a break and a breather. And I'm in a position to provide and help provide that to him. It's doing those things that are not, hey, can you show up for me? Hey, can you be there for me? Hey, can you catch me on this trust fall? I'm going to blindfold myself, fall backwards. Can you catch me? It's just, hey, I was falling backwards, didn't know it, and you caught me. That is the ultimate space of being a reliable individual. And so
It's even more than that. Like the conversation you had, there was no sugarcoating it. It was like, it wasn't like, what do you think about that? I've been noticing none of that soft sugarcoating type way. It was like, listen, man, this is what I'm seeing. This is what we're doing about it. Me and Kamala, your wife, we've already worked it all out. We both seen it. And I look at her, she's like, yeah, you need this. And you're like, you need this. It isn't like, do you need this or not? Where do you, nah, it was beyond that. And I think you understand the equity that you get with people more than most people. Like you knew you have the equity even to approach me like that. Like, you know that I know that you've earned it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's funny because I had to interject when you said it's just thing, because along with it's just is he'll understand, she'll understand, like what you were saying, Art. Like, hey, this is my brother. He'll understand if I have to back on that. What you have to realize is with each person that you have that relationship, you have equity with them. And when you make that decision to say it's just, or he'll understand or she'll understand, you are withdrawing from that equity. The tricky part is you don't know what the balance in that equity is. So you may run the well dry without knowing it. Because if you're doing that consciously, what are you doing unconsciously where you're lowering that equity? So it's the understanding what you can and can't. It goes back to setting those expectations, man. If there is gonna be times where you got to let people down. It's unavoidable. It's unavoidable. But being able to set those expectations and make it right, that sometimes when someone's let me down and the way they've handled it meant more than if they wouldn't have let me down in the first place. Because it's like, damn, I had enough of your respect where you felt you need to make it right to me. That hits different too.
right, it does. Really quick, because I see this is in the chat. Key came in and said, uh, I found myself, I think, as being unreliable at seasons when my priorities have shifted, whether business and family is taking precedence over social type things. Then he also says, I've also had seasons of being unreliable when highly stressed, anxious, or experiencing moments and or periods of depression. Absolutely. It's hard to show up for others when your boat is tattered with holes in it. I was talking to somebody today. I can't even remember who I was having this conversation with, but I was like, it's the equivalent. Trying to be reliable for somebody and you don't have your shit together is the equivalent of having a rowboat in the middle of the ocean with no oars. You're not going anywhere. You can't get to shore. You can't make whatever event it is because you don't have a means to move the boat. Your hand is not going to cut it. And so when we're in these spaces, this is why it's important to acknowledge when we're depressed as men, to say, hey, yo, something's a little off and I'm not feeling 110. I'm not even feeling 75. Like, it's important to acknowledge those moments and get the help, because the amount of time that you can be down acting like nothing's wrong, also you'll stop showing up in lives the way that you've been showing up in lives. And people will kind of either take issue with that and take it personal. That's why I said it's not really personal, but they'll take it personal And then all of a sudden you come out of that depression, you're like, okay, I got my feet underneath me. And some of those key players or those key people who were important in your life are now not around because they took that slight personal, right? But other times they might be around, but they trust you a little bit less. The relationship's a little more disconnected or distant because of the fact that they're like, yeah, I can see it's always going to be about you. And I think we all have had the experience where, there's that person who only calls you when they need something. Like, I need money, I need you to pick me up, whatever it may be, right? Um, and just like that reputation can garner over time, um, being reliable can be a reputation that you garner over time as well, and vice versa. You can be a reliable person, and this is where I really get into like loyalty. Reliability creates loyalty. Trust always creates loyalty. When people trust you, they are loyal to you because they can trust that you're not going to do something to harm them, right? It's like one of my coworkers. We're really, really good friends. We used to be coworkers. We're really like brothers now. Um, he had his first daughter when we were working together as coworkers, and then we built up a whole friendship. 3 years later, he has his next daughter, and I remember one day he asked, "Hey, my wife and I are going to go out. Do you mind coming and watching your niece?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem." And I think about that often, being that you're asking somebody who you met as a coworker, right, to come over and watch your female child, your child, period, but your female child. And I'm not like that. Normally, the babysitting task is allocated to girls and women. It's not typically allocated to this man who's going to have to change your daughter's diaper and get your daughter her bottle and put her to sleep. It's not normally allocated to a man, but the level of trust and rapport that we had was established at such a high level. He was like, I can go on a date with my wife and not have to worry about my kid because she's with somebody I love, that loves and cares about her, and that loves and values, and I trust our relationship enough for to know that he's going to do everything to take care of my daughter. Like, that's where reliability begins to um, afford you a different level of relationships with people, a completely different level of relationships with people, where it's no longer their character is at such a high reliability standard that there's nothing in question ever. It's like, no, if they did something like this, then there was a reason they thought to do this. Not like, oh, dang, I didn't know they were that kind of person. No, I know what kind of person they are. They're a reliable person. And so if they showed up like this, there was a reason they did that. What you got, Tim?
I was just gonna say it's funny because when you think about it, what does it really do? And like with trust and reliability, what they actually create is they create like uh, relaxation and decompression, and like you could go, ah, I know this person got it. You get what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, yeah, he could have got somebody to watch her, right? And he would have went out, but the whole time they're probably gonna be, oh, is she okay? How do we really feel about this? Are you really enjoying your time? But when you have trust involved, you can relax and you can decompress because and you have utmost faith that you don't have to worry about it. Like my boss gave me this comment. She told me she actually gave me the word reliable about a week ago, and she was like, I really like when I'm reviewing people's stuff, it's always I always look forward to when I get to you. And I usually save it for last because I know you're not going to have any crazy things going on. Your stuff's all in line. Your people are all where they're supposed to be. And if they aren't, you already got things in place. It's just more along the lines of like, I get to a little bit when reviewing your stuff. And that's what we create when we're reliable to people and they could trust us. Think about how often do you get to really decompress and put it in somebody else's hands? That's almost priceless, man. And when you're that to somebody, that's where I land on it. Is like it's an honor. It's an honor to when some like you knew that at the time when he asked it, like a lot of people would think about it. Like younger Tim would have been like, man, you're just trying to use me so you can go out and have a good time. And I would have been resentful for that. But older Tim is like, damn, that's an honor for you to even think of that me in that regard. Yeah, it'd be an honor to watch her. You know, now if you start dumping her over here every other day while you're in the wife or at Thunder Valley every other night, then I'm gonna have to have the assessment with you of, hey, this isn't what I appreciate you honoring me and with this trust, but you trust me too much. Take this kid back. I'm not her dad.
Right.
Or sign the paper. I'll raise her. Sign the paperwork over. Give me custody.
Right.
But yeah, so I'll turn it back to you, bro.
No, you're good. No, you're right though. It is like this sigh of relief that you get when you know that somebody's reliable. It's almost like if something was going down and they said help was on the way and you knew the person who was coming to help was a reliable person. It puts you at ease. It gives you this space where it's like, man, it's almost like saying Superman or Superwoman is coming, right? Because I know this person is going to come. When they show up, it's not going to be a game. Solutions are going to take place. And
like the wolf in Pulp Fiction. Like, oh, you sending in the wolf, we're all good. Like they were stressed out with the dead body in the car, right? But he told him the wolf was on the way. And think about that. When you're reliable, like you said, you like get to be the wolf to some people. That's, yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that you just struck.
No, you're right. It is like that though, where it's like, yeah, never mind. This is taken care of. You know, they got the Baba Yaga on his way. This is going to be taken care of, right? We're not going to be able to stop him. So whatever needs to happen is going to happen. But the other thing that is important on reliability, for me at least, when I think about it, is that it's never solidified. Because even in the sense with my brother, where I'm watching his daughter, I'm watching my niece, right? If there's too many instances of being unreliable, falling short of especially the expectation that you've set, all of a sudden that honor that you've earned can be stripped away. It's like, oh, you had 3 stripes. Yeah, we're just going to take one of those. You're 2 stripe now. 2 stripe general. No, now you're 1 stripe. Like it can go backwards. And I think sometimes complacency and or being comfortable with the fact that people know you as a reliable person can work to some people's disadvantage. It doesn't work to my disadvantage because I try to maintain a high bar at all times. But even when I go back to what I was saying, like when your wife asks you to do something, like my wife will be like, hey, babe, can you take the trash out before you go to the gym or whatever it may be? And you're like, you get to the car and you're getting ready to sit down and you're like, oh, damn, I forgot the trash. And most times you'll say, I'll just take it out when I get back, right? But that little speck of tarnish can grow and grow and grow into where every time I ask you to do something, you never do what I ask you to do. But if a friend calls you, you're jumping right on, right? Art, don't you got a point to be Art? I know.
Which, crazy enough, is kind of a valid point. And our natural defense mechanism is like, wait a minute, the mission's getting accomplished here. What's the big deal? But timing does play into it. And that's the thing I would say as men, I think we got to get better at overall, present company included, is we got to get better at not thinking that we got to defend our position every time and hear it for what it is. And sometimes, women are no different than men, but women need a little bit of this more, I would argue. That reassurance, man. Sometimes they need reassurances, and reassurances with words are one thing. Reassurances with actions are enough. Like, think about if she's seen you, right? If she watched you forget the trash. She's like, oh, there he went. He forgot to take the trash out. And then she's seen you come back in after you already were like out the parking lot or whatever, and she's seen you come back in. Think about how that would resonate. Like, he made it a point to honor what he said to me. Like, she wouldn't verbalize that to you, but subconsciously be like, shit, I mean that. I mean a lot to him. You know?
Right.
So I get where you're going with that. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's a small thing, but turning around is a small thing as well, right? It's not, and the challenge is I think most of us, many of us, me specifically, um, initially take defensive positions. It's like, whoa, like we're talking about me taking the trash out before I go to the gym. But what about all this other stuff that I do that has nothing to do with the trash, right? I take the defensive position, but the reality is I think you're right, Tim, is if you were to not take the defensive position and simply say, you know what, I apologize, babe, let me get that trash out right away for you. And part of that is our ego as men. We don't like to be told what to do. I remember I worked for a company, and it was a professional organization that I worked for, and there was something happening to where a coworker and I kind of got into it. And I remember I was walking over to his desk to talk to him, and well, I should say argue with him. And he says, "Man, go back to your desk and sit down." So I will beat the brakes off of this entire building to whoop your ass. Like, what are you talking about? But we don't like to be told what to do. But if he was just being like, hey, man, you know what? This ain't the place for that. I'm not trying to get into this with you. Just can you go back to your section of the office? Can you go back is different than go back and sit down. Who the hell are you talking to? Like, if you think you can sit me down in this business suit, let's find that out today. Like, it was one of those moments where it was like, I really understood that I don't like for you to tell me what to do. And the challenge when you're in a relationship or when you're interacting, I think even for men, sometimes in the business world, when they report to women and a woman says, oh, I need you to do this, or you didn't do this correctly, and this is how you need to do it. It's like, ooh, you're telling me what to do. And I don't like to be told what to do, whether it's a man or a woman, but when it's my partner who's telling me what to do, especially when you're the type of man who sees yourself as a leader and the leader of your family, it's like, whoa. What we can't do is you just simply tell me what to do. But what I've been trying to get better at is talking to my wife about, and we'll answer that question in a second, but I've been trying to get better at talking to my wife about, okay, so what's really going on here? I had that happen today where she said, never mind. And I was like, what are we never minding? Like, what is the never mind about? Right. And it didn't go as productive. The conversation didn't go as productive as I would like it to go, but it was like, okay, you're saying never mind because apparently I'm not doing something that you want me to do, but I have already done what I want to do. So this never mind. This is interesting. We got women in the chat today. Hello, Gina, and hello, Deanne. But
hey, what's up, Deanne? If you can hear me, I don't know. I don't have my comments on. I can't comment, but
these are people. Yeah, it's. She said, "LOL." She can hear you. But going back, I may not have handled it exactly the right way, but I was trying to get to like, okay, what is the never mind? Because if you're trying to ask me to do something, I want to be open to either doing it or be open to letting you know why I don't want to do that. But if you're trying to tell me what to do, this is going to be one of those conversations that's going to be a difficult conversation for us to have. And so, really quick, because I do have some things here in the chat. I got my son in the room in the building.
See that.
Ezekiel Young Rowe. He said first. He said complacency kills was a common quote in guns. And then here he actually has a question. He says, so what's the balance between comfort and readiness? So I'm going to use it in the terms of reliability, right? In the balance of comfort and readiness. And I'll pose this question to you guys first. How do we find that balance between being comfortable with being reliable with the people that we love and we care about and being ready to support them in the ways that we need to support them, but not putting ourselves out to where we are jeopardizing everything for ourselves to be reliable for them? It's like if I have a job that I have to go to, like you said earlier, Tim, yeah, I want to be there and see your games, but I can't be at every game because unless you want to live in the field that you're playing the game on, I have to go to work. How do we find that balance as men between that comfortability and readiness?
I would think it would have a lot to do with your bond to that person. You know what I mean? Like, in a sense, your loyalty, in a sense, your your friendship, like your dedication to that friendship, because it goes back to your brother that said, "Hey, take care of my little girl." You did, and it's all great. Now that's a valuable friendship right there. It's like that's something that you would in a sense swim through every ocean and climb any mountain for that person. Um, but you always got to be ready to take on new people. I have a little bit of an example is an old friend of mine, like almost a year ago, 2 years ago. She said, "Hey, I'm really struggling. Is there any way you can help me co-sign for a car?" And I'm like, "Wow, I didn't know our friendship was at that level." But I was like, "Sorry, I can't afford a car right now." And she's like, "Well, no, it's not for you. It'll be for me. I'll make the monthly payments and stuff like that." I was like, "I understand you will, but the problem is, what about if you don't make that monthly payment? I can't afford a new car, or I can't afford another car. So if I'm going to let you borrow something, in a sense, if I'm going to give you my time, it's because I'm giving it to you. I'm going to give you money. Because I don't expect it back. In a sense, when they say, 'Hey, I'll pay you back,' that's kind of like yeah, it ain't going to come back. So I can afford to lose whatever it is they ask. But you got to be ready to take on those types of friendships as well, because readiness comes in from family, friends, people you barely interacted, and new people. And it's just, again, me being a spiritual person in a sense, believing in Jesus. He sends he sends messengers as well as he sends angels through anybody and everybody. And we, as good people, good-hearted people, hey, we have to, in a sense, be able to be there for as many people as we can without jeopardizing our flock. You know what I mean?
So it's funny thing, or like what I would have told that woman would have been totally different. I'd have been like, listen, if you had a husband and a woman asked him to co-sign for him, how would you take that? Like, you're asking me not only to do something for you, you're asking to put me in a position with the woman I love in order to do so. Like, that's a tall ask. She might get removed off the Facebook purge in about a year. But for Billy's point, but I love your question, Z. But the question here's my thing is there is a spectrum with the balance. You should always be 60% ready, 40% comfortable, meaning that you can't, like me as a person, I can't feel totally comfortable if I don't know how a react if X, Y, or Z happened, or if this, that, or the other came up. Um, I have to have some type of baseline, or I can't even be comfortable in the first place. So to me, it's a matter of um, it's about a 60-40 split, because it is, you can't run at a high level. I mean, Z, you have a service background, and so do you, Art. You understand this. What happens when you run at a certain readiness level for so long is you can't turn it off. It triggers post-traumatic stress. So that goes with relations with people too. If you're living, and ready for somebody else, then what are you doing for you? And your balance is off. So that's how I would answer that question, Z. There's not a miracle potion for it. There's not a recipe in a cookbook for it, man. But the short answer is put yourself in a position to where you can't fully be, where you can't fully be comfortable if you don't have somewhat of a readiness for certain things. That's how I would answer that.
Yeah, I think a 60-40 split is a pretty good ratio, because you can't just sit there and, like, especially coming from, like, if you're in a combat situation, you can't just sit there with your bullets not in your magazines ready to load to your gun, right? There is a preparation that takes place. Hey, we're going to have at least 5 magazines ready to rock and roll should we need to defend this position that we're in. We're not going to be, they're coming, loading bullets. That's not what we're going to be doing, right? And that's the readiness aspect. But what you don't
Right.
need
But you don't
is
need to be that ready when you're back from deployment and in the rear.
right. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time is even men who don't go and are not deployed feel like they have to be ready, 100% ready to go. I mean, somebody breaks into the house, I got to be ready to go, right? And in some ways, I am ready to go if somebody breaks into my house. Like there are some things that are already in place, ready to take care of some situations should the need arise. But I don't go to sleep with one eye open because I got to be ready to go, and I just got to make sure that this eye is focused the moment I wake up. There's a balance in that. I need to, in order to have health and in order to have a healthy mentality for the next day, I have to get rest. I'm actually reading a book right now called The Reason Why We Sleep. And there's a lot in there that takes place like just from the restful aspect. And so when you think about comfort and readiness and you go from sleep to being awake, right? If comfort is sleep and readiness is being awake, the reason why we sleep, there's so many things that happen into our mind. Our mind reconciles all the thoughts and the experiences that it had for the day. Our bodies at the cellular level begin to relax and release out the toxin that it needs to get rid of and starts purging the body. It's almost like a janitor coming in through the body from the mind to the cells to everything that's going on and starts cleaning the system. And if you don't sleep, that doesn't take place for you. And so then the same aspect from comfort to readiness, if everything is ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, you never relax. And the processes of reducing anxiety and reducing stress and reducing the thought that you have to figure everything out today, that never goes away and it never subsides enough for the body to just simply relax and say, okay, I got enough things at the ready to where I can sit down on the couch, right? I can sit down on the couch and enjoy a segment of today. And I talk about this in my book where I talk about mindfulness meditation, being mindful in the present moment, being able to understand the aches that you have, the pains that you have, the thoughts that you have, but not judging those thoughts in the present moment. Just allowing those thoughts to be what they are, allowing those aches to be what they are, allowing your breath as it comes in and out of your body to realize that that is an automated process and it doesn't require you to be involved in it. It requires you to be alive for it to take place, but it doesn't require you to intentionally focus on it in order for it to happen. And so if we can get into this space where we become more mindful about the present, that's really the and in this question. So what is the balance between comfort and is the mindfulness? It's not the comfort, it's not the readiness, it's what's happening in that neutral space in the present moment. If we can get comfortable with the and in this question, I think that's where you'll find you don't always have to be on 10 to be ready for everything. And sometimes you can be on 10 and still not be ready. So it's good to
Right.
have moments where you can rest, relax, and be off your laurels a little bit. So that way you have the energy necessary when you have to ramp up quickly and you may have to give a little bit more. Hope that
Yeah.
answers your question, son.
I was gonna say, I was gonna add to it at this, like, you got to be careful with that readiness too, because usually when people come to you because they need you, it's for something they didn't see coming with themselves. Like, how the hell are you gonna plan to see it for them? So a lot of the readiness is, it may go out the window because is the time frame realistic? Is what they're asking for even doable? Sometimes, yeah, I need $1 million tomorrow, or I lose my eye. It's like, well, I'll see you in a week. We'll go shopping for eye patches because I can't make that happen. You know what I mean? Like, there's, you got to be careful with that, and that that's where a lot of anxiety comes from. Is when I think about my struggles with anxiety, a lot of my anxiety came from shit that didn't even come to fruition. The worrying, the planning and stressing about what could happen in these areas, and those things never even came to fruition. If I could monetize the amount of energy and anxiety I've wasted on things that weren't coming true, I would be live in the men's circle from Bora Bora right now with a straw hat on. So it's, some of it is like, to question Z. It's a lot of it is a fool's errand too, because you could be as prepared as you want to be for X, but they hit you with Y and Z. You know, I got all the money in the world, but you need something that money can't buy. I got all the time in the world, but your time is great, but I need money and you don't got that. So some of it is a fool's errand, Z. So there's no magic sauce.
Yeah, it's kind of like the concept of, I'm not ready to have kids yet. I don't know about you guys. I even to this day, I'm not ready to have kids, and I already got 4 of them. You know what I mean? It just,
Right.
you go, you got to go and trust feeling and your better judgment with the support of your other half too.
Yeah. No, I agree. Appreciate the question. Really quick, I want to bring in from the chat also. Key said, "Baby, can you take out the trash?" Sure, give me a couple of minutes. 10 seconds later, she sighs and takes that out herself with an attitude. Yep. Fortunately, we have an agreement in my house. My wife takes the trash out of the trash receptacle, ties it, and that is my indicator that it is my responsibility to take it out at that time. So we have a system in place for the trash taking outage. Gina also said hello to you as well, Tim, and Deanne did as well. It's hard seeing your new last name, Deanne, because I want to call you by your maiden last name. Well, we're almost actually at time, but there is one more question that I do want to, and I feel like we've been kind of touching on it, but I want to really bring it to the surface as far as the question that's important to me that we answer. And that question really is about how do we correct discrepancies in our reliability as men? I think you guys have already given some great tools this evening, but if we were to give one solid hammer, right, one solid chainsaw, whatever the tool is, what would be your go-to when it comes to realizing that you've made a mistake, you weren't true to your word, you may have breached some trust? How do you then reestablish and reinstill reliability as a man?
You want to go, Art? So I'll leave it to you.
I was about to throw it to you.
I'll take it. I'll take it then.
Oh,
So,
okay, go ahead, Dave.
To me, the most important way, it's like the old saying, the best way to solve a problem is to acknowledge there's a problem. One of the things that happens, especially in like my family, not my family, but like my family, my now extended family that I grew up with, that my siblings, my mom and dad, and really a lot of people I noticed in that generation, we don't acknowledge shit that happened. We just try to act like nothing happened. You know what I mean? Like back in the day, mom whoop your ass and then be like, "Hey, you hungry? Come in here and eat." It's like you just ain't gonna acknowledge that you just beat me within an inch of my life. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, did I deserve to get whooped? Yes. My mom is a saint. There's times where I shouldn't have got whooped, but my trust wasn't there where she would believe me. That was on me. When I look back on it, that's on me. So, the nothing hits better with this, at least with me, because I think of this question as if someone was wronged by me and they had to make it up to me, what would get to me? And it's the owning it. If you can't own what you've done, I don't want to hear anything else. Too many times in this world, we try to sweep things under the rug like they didn't happen. No, own it. Own what you did. You know I let you down. I didn't come through with you for this, that, and the other. And I can only imagine how you view me at this point, but I want to make it right to you. How can I do that? Those are conversations we need to have more of in society that we just don't. We just, oh, I got you this gift. I'm sorry. And we think that we can buy people's forgiveness, whether it's through gifts, currency, or something else, when really the only one that matters is, hey, look, I acknowledge I did you wrong or I didn't come through for you. And I want to be better. That shit hits different. But I'll turn it over to you now, Art.
I like that, and at the end of the day, that's what it is. Kind of like a bro code, I guess, a man's code by default, I guess. Because yeah, it's just the acknowledgement. Like, yeah, you know what? Sorry, man, I messed up. Not so much of the excuse, but just the recognition and the hey, man, let's have a beer. sorry, let's just try to work this out. It's X, Y, and Z, but in a sense, try to rebuild that and hopes hopes in the best that next time I seek you, then you'll come through. But it just goes back to also that of I'm not really tripping out anymore. I needed you. I probably got stressed out and F-bombed you a couple times, but at the end of the day, the mission got done. We're good. Whatever I needed you for is complete and over with, and yeah, let's just move on.
It's hard as of the, we'll just let it go. Let bygones be bygones. Now, I like what you said there, Tim, as far as the owning it aspect. I think for me, that's what comes out of the tool shed for me. We talk about the shed in the conference. That's the tool in the shed for me is, hey, nobody's expecting you to get it 100% right except for you. Like, that's a pressure you're putting on yourself internally. The reality, whether I'm your father or I'm your brother or I'm your son, is even our kids aren't, though they want us to get it right every time, they realize that we're humans and we're not going to get it right every single time. Like, they understand that from us. And so when you can be accountable to the fact that, hey, look, I think we both know I messed up here. And if we don't, I feel like I messed up here. Let's have a conversation about that. Talk about how we can improve this situation. Talk about how we can set clearer expectations for what we want to see from each other in the future. Like, even with my wife, sometimes I'm like, hey, look, I don't want to play charades. I just want you to tell me what it is that's bothering you. Right. Madonna, Vogue, 1999, Material Girl. Like, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to play charades. I want to have communication. And I understand, especially in relationships, communication is extremely difficult because I tell my wife now, I tell her, this is what I'm hearing you say. And she'll say, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, then I need you to say what you're saying again, but I need you to say it differently. And because this is what I'm hearing you say. And part of that can be me, right? But part of that can be how you're saying what you're saying to me. If you're saying what you're saying to me with an attitude and you're saying, well, I'm not really mad at you. Well, that's not what your attitude is saying to me. Your attitude is saying you're mad, you're irritated, you're agitated. And now I don't know if it's an issue or if it's you're just irritated and agitated. And so for me, I agree with you, Tim. It's that accountability aspect to be able to start the conversation of, okay, we messed up. You messed up. I messed up. Whatever, we messed up. Um, but how do we make this right and make it better the next time around? Because I value you in my life. And I think that's the other tool I would bring in into reliability. That to remove that, making it where it feels like it's personal, is to say, I value the fact that you're in my life and I'm not actively trying to get you out of it. I want you in my life. And I have to say that in arguments sometimes with my wife and I'd say, hey, look, in the moments when we're in an argument and it seems like what I want is distance, realize that my intent is never to create distance, it's to create closeness. That's what I want from you, is this closeness. I want us to be close, not distant. So that accountability aspect allows you to remove that personal tinge, that sometimes not following through on your account, on your reliabilities or your responsibilities. Um, it allows you to remove that tinge and then move back to a space on how you're going to make it better.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think in general, and this is in general, D, don't kill me and the other ladies in the chat, but it feels like that all like women are more emotionally in tune than men. I'll give you that. But human beings, men and women, we struggle to express emotion and describe it, which actually makes it more difficult for a woman. Because a woman that's feeling more emotion, if they're unable to express it accurately, it comes off as attitude. It comes off as tension. Like you're just saying how she said, Like I would have poked fun at my wife. Like she would have been like, I don't have an attitude. I'm like, hey, if we were playing charades, I'm guessing attitude. That's where I'm going with it. I would have made like a fun with it, but I got to give credit to my wife, man. She's actually really been a cog that helped me with this because she'll tell me like, hey, like she starts a lot with, I feel that we're doing this. What do you feel? And it's like she's taught me how to communicate like that, which is really helped me out. But it's funny, like I put myself in the shoes of a woman. I like someone who's more emotional by design. When you don't know how to express emotionally, that got to be extra tough, and it's going to come out as something that's probably it's not intended to do. So that's something I'm trying to be a little bit more aware of too.
Yeah, no, 100%. I have one more thing from the chat I want to bring in really quick. Keith says, Ro, you and I had a discussion before about defining how you want someone to be in your life. So I'd say apologize, then ask the question, what does reliability look like to you coming from me? Absolutely. Instead of taking all these damn shots in the dark, just ask. Just ask. You'll be surprised when you just ask, people will actually tell you. And then sometimes they won't tell you, but they'll realize, you know what, I'm kind of confused on this thing too. Let me get back to you. My wife has asked me numerous times, I've told her, hey, I want you to be vulnerable with me. And she'd be like, well, what does that look like? And sometimes I wouldn't have the answer for that. But when we'd have situations where it's like, hey, you're not being vulnerable, I could use that and say, this is what vulnerability would look like in this situation. And I just give her examples and give her examples and give her examples and give her examples. And she's a work in progress on this. But as she continues to get more and more examples, she's getting more and more information to be able to display characteristics of vulnerability. I'm like, look, I didn't want to be with some dude who's just as tough as I am. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in having a woman who has feminism or feminist characteristics and doesn't feel like she has to be tough and the protector of everything. That's why I'm here. I'm here for the protection and the provision, but I need that support from my wife.
That's what I kind of admire about y'all relationship too, though. Like, your wife, she's a strong woman because she had to be, and she got you. Like same thing we talk about how we're used to making decisions our whole life. She's kind of in that same role. She could probably identify with tonight's topic more than most. And that's kind of tough to kind of turn something off when it's already kind of pre-programmed. But you, instead of meeting that with and antagonistically, you meet it with support. So that is it's you're exactly what each other need from each other, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, shoot, I'm looking at this time. We are about to wrap. That was another fast 2 hours. Especially after coming out of like an 8-hour day on Sunday. 2 hours is really, really quick. But as always, I like to do kind of final thoughts before we wrap the segment up. Art, we'll start with you, man. Final thoughts, final closing thoughts for today when it comes to reliability.
Oh man, just in a sense, we pretty much covered it all. Like I really like some of the information you guys dished out throughout there, and just reliability again, man. That's something that's got to be within you naturally, and that makes your whole. And what I mean by whole is you and your family happy, because again, it's your inner circle, it's your small circle that you have to keep happy, satisfied, and protected. And if it's taken away from your time from them, then and there's no positivity for your circle, and that's something that it needs to be reevaluated, But other than that, that's something that we have within ourselves to be the example of for who we are raising and creating, instilling those values.
Cool, I love it. Tim, what you got?
I'll be I know I've been kind of long-winded like usual tonight, so I'll be kind of quick. It's don't just say you care, show you care, man. For those people that mean something to you in your life, put your actions where your mouth is. Showing that you care hits differently than just saying that you do. So be reliable to those that warrant it. Be selective with who you're reliable to. And if you give your word, you see it through. So be very careful and selective to who gets that word, and treat it like the currency that it is. Yeah, now back to you, Billy.
That was super quick. Hold on really quick because I was typing something. 1 second.
I'm usually reliable to stall for time, but I was unreliable in this sense.
No problem. And then it's funny because I unmuted myself and it erased what I was typing. There we go. All right. Closing thoughts for me. I always have takeaways, but closing thoughts for me when it comes to reliability really is about the weight of your word. Whether that word is you're keeping that word to yourself or you're giving that word to somebody else. There were a lot of things that I got out tonight, but overall, the overall arching theme is when you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you find that you're in a space where you're not capable of doing it, to communicate that. And sometimes that means you're going to come off as an unreliable person. Because Tim, you were like, I don't want to be not to be wishy-washy. Sometimes it is a wishy-washy situation, but sometimes that's just what life is, and you have to roll with that. As always, when we're on live, I'm taking tons and tons of notes and pulling out the key takeaways. So I have 5 key takeaways that I gathered from tonight. The very first takeaway was start small to build reliability. I forget who said that, but it was
that was hard.
It was the small things, like just step by step. Sometimes we jump all the way from A to Z, and it's like, oh well, now I can't maintain Z. Now I have to go all the way back to L, which is the middle of the alphabet. I got to go back to the middle and then work my way back up to Z. Just start small when it comes to building reliability. You'll build a much more solid foundation, and you'll be able to identify when things are outside of your capabilities. And that way you'll commit to less things that you have to fall back on later on, go back to and uncommit to. Key takeaway number 2 was the way to protect your reputation is by setting expectations. Tim, I love that you said that. You're like, sometimes I'll just set it up like, hey, I believe I can do this, but I need to check my calendar. My wife and I have a family calendar. So sometimes I will overbook things, but it'll be like, hey, this wasn't on the calendar. I didn't see it, so I didn't know we had something that was going on. Sometimes that means what we would have had going on gets bumped to a different day if it can. Sometimes that means I have to go back to the person and say, hey, look, my wife and I had something that just wasn't on our calendar. I didn't see it, so I'm not going to be able to come through like I thought I'd be able to come through. But then that goes back to, again, communicating early that hey, look, I believe I can do this, but let me double check with the family, make sure it's cool, right? Key takeaway number 3 that I came up with tonight, or that came up tonight, was reliability creates trust. The more reliable that you are, the more people will trust you with the greater things in life, whether that's their secrets, if that's your ability to borrow money from them, your ability to watch their kids, your ability to know that they're out of town and can you go by my house and check on it, right? Like all those things, reliability creates trust. And in the opposite of that, every time that you are unreliable, you're actually creating distrust. You're moving away from people wanting to be trustful, people seeing you as trustworthy. And honestly, the more people trust you, the more loyal they are to you. So the less people trust you, the less loyal they are to you. If they trust you that you're going to call them every time and ask them to borrow that money, they're going to be like, yeah, I'm going to stop answering the phone. There's no loyalty there. But if it's like you've come through in the clutch, they've called you in the middle of the night and all these different things, and they get to a space where if you need it, they have it, or if they have it and you need it, you got it. Reliability creates those types of levels of trust and those deeper relationships. Key takeaway number 4 is start with yourself and grow from there. Going back to that, start small and to building reliability. It goes back to what I said in the beginning. Some people are just not reliable to themselves, so it's impossible for them to be reliable to other people. So it's really a good space to start is with yourself. And then as you become more reliable, like, man, I said I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week, and I went to the gym 3 times this week. I said that I was going to make my bed every day this week, and I made my bed every day this week. As you practice those small things and get better at meeting your commitments to yourself, you'll become more reliable in meeting your commitments to others. But it has to start with you. So it's no different than what I would say is how you show up at work is pretty much how you show up at life. You can't show up at work, oh, I'm a great person 5 days a week. Everybody loves me and I'm always there for everybody. I lend an ear and all these different things, and then go home and be like, yeah, I'm not any of those things. And then vice versa. You can't not be that at home and then show up at work and think that you're going to be, the company's gift from God. It's just not going to work out that way. So start with yourself and grow from there and expand accordingly. Don't expand too fast because you find you can't spin all the plates at one time. And then the last key takeaway from tonight is don't take it personal. Um, and this is more so when we are counting on people to be reliable to us. Don't take it personal. And I had a great dose of medicine on that. Like you said, Tim, there were people who were like, oh, yeah, I'm going to be at the conference. I'll be there. I'll be there. I'll be there. And then they weren't there. And I just simply said, I'm not going to take that personal for whatever reason they weren't there. Maybe they have a good reason. Maybe they don't have a reason. Maybe they really weren't going to come in the first place. But I'm not going to take it personal. It wasn't for me to take personal, because it's like if you're giving somebody something, if you're giving something to somebody, you've put in work to produce a product, and you're going to give that product to somebody, and they choose not to show up to receive the product, then that's not personal to you. That's something that maybe they're dealing with themselves, either internally or they had something come up in life and they just weren't able to do it. But either way, don't take it personal. When people let you down, people disappoint you, and they're not as reliable as you would like them to be, don't take it personal. But I would add to this, be willing to have that conversation with them. If it's somebody you want to continue to have in your life and continue to have a relationship with. I had to do that with one of my brothers who was flaky for a long time. He was just not showing up to stuff. And I said, hey, look, I'm going to stop inviting you to things. I want you at things, but I'm going to stop inviting you to things because at this point, I can't trust you to show up with the napkins. Like, I'm not interested in that. And as you show me through accountability and being more reliable step by step by starting small, that you can show up to things, then we'll move back to the space where we're in a relationship where I can invite you to things because I know that when you say you're coming, you're coming. But until then, I can't. I don't like the way that you just flaking and not showing up makes me feel. I can't get down with that. And our relationship is still intact today because I didn't take it personal, but I did hold him accountable for how I would like for him to show up in my life, because it's the way that I'm willing to show up in his life. So those are the takeaways that we have for this evening. It's been, as always, a pleasure interacting with you gentlemen on the Men's Circle. Thank you for those who were able to tune in and jump in on the live. Appreciate you guys jumping in and sharing your thoughts and asking your questions. Special shout out to my son, Ezekiel Rowe. Appreciate you tuning in tonight, son. But other than that, man, we got a lot more work to do as men. I thought about sharing what the next topic will be, but I'm not going to. You'll have to stay tuned to social media to find out what the next topic will be. But we will be back in 2 more weeks from today. I'm not exactly sure what date that is, or 10th of October. We'll be back on the 10th of October with the next session of the Men's Circle. So until the next time, if you do like this video, share it. If you share this video, like it. Always happy to engage with you in the live chat. Always happy to engage with my brothers on the panel for the evening. But until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thank you for sitting on the first row.